From the crossroads of the Ozarks, this is P.I.D. Radio. Welcome, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and Derek is right. It literally is crossroads of the Ozarks.
It says so right there on the USGS map.
Yep, that's where we live, crossroads. Boy, I'll tell you what, it's lots of things going on, but before we dive into all of that, I want to remind you to download our app.
Please, it's free, and it gets all of our content right to you, bypassing the gatekeepers of big tech. Content hosted on the Christian company that developed the app, and they've been very gracious. They show no intention of censoring us or any of our friends, because a lot of ministries that you probably are aware of, even follow, use the same company, Subsplash, for their apps, like Skywatch TV, Prophecy Watchers,
L.A.
Marzulli, Ken Johnson, Doug Hamp. It's used by a lot of folks, and so we highly recommend it.
It's reliable, it's affordable, and these folks are wonderful to work with.
Yes, so please take advantage of it. You'll find it at gilberthouse.org/app. That's the best place to go. You can also find it at our PIDradio.com website. But get the app, and please join in the community there. There's a little tab at the top right corner when you get the app on your phone or tablet, and those little thought balloons there. If you join the community there, you can ask questions directly of us, ask questions of one another, comment on these shows, ask for prayer, offer prayer. It really is a nice little community. And because it's all hosted offline, it's not being trolled by the bots, not being put out there for the whole world. So it's
exactly.
Yeah.
And we want to remind you, when we say it's affordable, it means that Derek and I can afford to pay for it.
Right.
It costs you nothing.
Thank you.
However, those of you who are kind enough to donate to Gilbert House Ministries, you help us to pay that monthly fee to Subsplash to host and create this app for everybody to use. So you're helping us to blather.
Indeed. This is a much more cost-effective way of getting the message out and guaranteeing that we're not cut off than paying to be on a television network somewhere.
Exactly.
I mean, nothing wrong with that, but that's a costly way to go. But the app is very affordable.
And I'll tell you, if you are listening to this on YouTube and you just prefer that platform, we get it. We may disappear from there one day, not willingly, but who knows. But if you do listen to us there, then please subscribe. If you haven't done that yet, it helps the algorithm, and like it. So like it, subscribe. That helps the algorithm to move us up in what they recommend, and it helps others to discover PID Radio and Gilbert House Ministries. Right.
So thank you very much for doing that. Well, welcome, and thank you for taking time out of your schedule to listen or watch, as the case may be, even though if you're watching on YouTube, it's just a static image.
Yeah,
not very exciting.
If you're new to, that's why I say listen. If you're new to this, you just discovered us because perhaps the name of this particular episode or any of our episodes is something you find interesting, then we want to welcome you to the Gilbert House Ministries community. We just really try to share a lot of out there sort of topics. Some are geopolitical, some are theopolitical, some are conspiratorial. I mean, there are lots of things Derek and I have been talking about since 2005.
Yeah. Actually, next March will mark 20 years.
I know. Can you believe it? Well, we're in our 20th year now.
Yeah.
It's always kind of weird.
That's why they call us the OGs.
Yeah.
Old Gilberts.
Yeah, the old Gilberts. Yeah. Not gangsters. But
I had to look that up. I didn't know what it meant the first time somebody...
Neither did I. I thought...
One of the OGs of the Christian podcasting. Oh, geez.
Og? I don't want to be called Og. That's not good. Get us kicked off. We just celebrated, of course, the 4th of July, and that is the same time of year when the Roswell crash occurred. Right. You and Donna Howell and Allie Anderson have written a new book. Is that coming out this year?
I'm not sure.
Next year?
It may be out late this year. The title is Destination Earth, and it deals with the UAP phenomenon and also the alien abduction phenomenon, because there are really two facets to that. We got the cover art for it, and
it's amazing. Once again, Jeffrey Martis. Boy, you are so good, Jeffrey.
Absolutely. This is another winner. It should go to editing, and maybe I think it's with the editor right now. I don't think it's gone to typesetting yet, but since it's a collaborative effort, I don't have to worry about giving final approval on that.
Have you received anything back from the editor yet for, alterations? This goes through one or two editing processes, and the editor will send it back and say, you might want to clarify this, or you might want to footnote this, or whatever.
Yeah.
So you'll have a few changes to make.
Yeah. No, I haven't seen that yet.
Well,
so it likely would be first quarter next year, I would think, rather than the end of this year. Because I know our book is coming out toward the end of this year.
Yeah, The Gates of Hell.
Right. And that one is with the printer now. I'm also in the process of going through and putting together a pronunciation guide for the voice talent who's going to record the audiobook.
Yes, going to have an audiobook. Defender Publishing is going to the trouble, and honestly it is. It's a lot of work.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's an expense to create audiobooks for many of you who have asked for them. If you are subscribing to Audible, and I do, so you like to listen to a book now and then, and some of you, that's the only way you can because you work all day long. You can't stop to read. So if you're a painter or you drive a lot, then being able to listen, multitask,
right,
that helps a lot. So yeah, you need to tell the voice artist, this is how you pronounce Sumerian words.
Sumerian and Hebrew. I didn't realize there were so many. Donna Howell had asked me to do this a couple of weeks ago, and frankly, I said I would, and then I forgot about it. But we had the, here.
I know we've had lots of things
His
happen.
Call Ministries conference and other things.
All you can do is.
But anyway, 14 pages so far, and I'm about 2/3 done.
Is that single spaced or double?
Double.
Oh well, see, it's only 7.
I didn't realize I'd put so many foreign words in there. And not just like French and Spanish. We're talking ancient Canaanite and Hebrew and Sumerian.
You and I encounter those words so often anymore. We don't think much about them.
Right.
We automatically pronounce them in our heads, but yeah, you need to tell the person that. Well, let me kick off the stories with something that really is from last month. But I think if you're sitting there and you're thinking, boy, everything's just getting worse and worse and worse. Well, good news. A spiritualist healer who had an out-of-body experience says she was told by the higher powers that it wasn't her time to go yet, but a golden age is coming. Hey! Oh. Boy, that sounds familiar, doesn't it?
It does. That was one of the theses of the second coming of Saturn, which is the whole point. We need to bring back Saturn to bring back the golden age.
Which is why I'm bringing up the story.
Well, yeah, that is...
Julie Poole from Cardiff discusses this in a 30-minute interview for the podcast Life After Life. Now, I want to make it clear that I am not in any way disparaging this woman. She probably believes what she's saying.
Right.
Most people who say that they have had an experience. And they are only relaying what they were told. But here's the thing Julie may not know. The spirit realm often lies.
Right. That's why John wrote in one of his letters that we should test the spirits, for not all are from God.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I bring this up, because the spirits are telling her that a golden age is coming. That's counter to Bible prophecy.
It is. We may find a revival, but no, it's... there is also a great falling away, the great apostasy.
Yep. I just sent you a text with the link to that story.
Okay.
In case you couldn't find it.
Yeah.
Ding.
Oh, yeah. Let's put that on silent and put that on do not disturb. 1 John 4:1, by the way, if you're looking up that, you want to look up that verse. Beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, for many false prophets have gone out into the world.
Yes, absolutely. We've got the ability of fallen angels to appear however they choose. We've got the ability of demons to inhabit human beings.
Satan appears as an angel of light. So, yeah, spiritualist healer. I wrote a lot about the spiritualist movement in the context of the upcoming book, Destination Earth.
And that's one reason we started out with this whole thing. I knew that with Second Coming of Saturn, there are a lot of things we've written and talked about that relate to this idea. Second
Coming of Saturn, obviously the prophecy, or what is interpreted as a prophecy by occultists, the fourth eclogue by the Roman poet Virgil, Justice returns old Saturn's reign with a new breed of men sent
come down from
heaven. A prophecy, he thought. Well, maybe, Virgil may not have even seen it as a prophecy, but it was certainly taken as such by many of his readers, including Christians like the Emperor Constantine, who legalized Christianity.
He had to have seen it because he mentions the Sibyl.
Yeah, let me look it up because I've got it saved as a text because we refer to it often enough. But he does reference the Cumaean Sibyl, who played a really critical role in the founding of Rome. The Cumaean Sibyl, who was Cumae was a Greek colony on the southern tip, like the boot of Italy, and one of the most important of the oracles that were consulted by people in the Mediterranean world. The story goes that the Sibyl in the 6th century BC came to the last king of Rome before they became a republic, whose name was Tarquinius Superbus, Tarquin the Proud, and offered him a collection of like 9 scrolls on which were all of these oracles that the gods had given to her. And she asked some ridiculous amount for it, and he laughed at her. So she took 3 of the scrolls, threw them on the fire, and then offered him the remaining 6 at the same price. He, again, basically told her to go away. So she took 3 more, threw those on the fire, and the last 3 then she offered at the same price as the original 9, at which point the king's advisor said, King, she might have something here. So anyway, they bought those scrolls, and those were only allowed to be viewed by a small collection of men in the Roman Senate for centuries. At first it was like 5, then eventually it was like 15. But they were so important that when the temple of Jupiter, where they were kept, burned during a civil war around 80 BC, the scrolls were burned. And so the Roman government sent agents out throughout the empire to try to find copies or additional, oracles, whatever. They needed to replace the oracles so they could guide the government. Bottom line, that's how important the Cumaean Sibyl was. Well,
I know you got it in front of you, and there are a couple of lines, because this is the return of Saturn, is the second coming of Saturn, is where you get this line of circling centuries begins anew, justice returns old Saturn's reign. But there's a line further down. He shall receive, this is he, Apollo, he shall receive the life of gods and see heroes with gods commingling. That sounds like pre-flood.
Yeah, it was written around the year 40 BC. This was just after the assassination of Julius Caesar during the beginning of the triumvirate with Octavian, who became Caesar Augustus, Mark Antony, and Lepidus as the triumvirate. And he writes to the guy who'd just been elected consul, which was the highest elected office in Rome at the time, sort of like the president of Rome. Didn't really hold the power, sort of like the president in the United States, not really hold the power. And in thy consulate, this glorious age, O Pollio, shall begin, and the months enter on their mighty march. Under thy guidance, he's basically sucking up here. Whatso tracks remain of our old wickedness, once done away, shall free the earth from never ceasing fear. They believe that this prophesied boy, as you say, Apollo, only do thou at the boy's birth, in whom the iron shall cease, the golden race arise.
Yes.
This is based on the historical ages of the Greek poet Hesiod, who wrote that there was a golden age when Kronos, or Saturn, ruled, followed by a silver age where things were still pretty good, but not quite as good. A bronze age where things really got rough, and there was a violent age. Men followed the ways of wicked Ares, Mars, the god of war. And now the current iron age where the gods made life miserable for all men.
Boy, that sounds familiar. Anyone who has read Bible prophecy.
Yeah.
Well,
Nebuchadnezzar's
also,
dream.
Yes, indeed. Well, in this particular English translation, because there are a number of them, the iron shall cease, the golden race arise. This idea of a golden race and a golden age, that is what Hitler was trying to do.
Yeah.
The Fourth Reich was supposed to have 1,000 years of a golden age with a perfect race rising to the top, the Übermensch.
Not all that different from what Blavatsky thought, with a 7th root race emerging.
Yes, exactly. this will be part of the lie when the false Christ, the Antichrist, arises.
Mm-hmm.
That's who's coming.
Right.
That's their so-called golden age.
Mm-hmm.
And some people, many, many, many people are going to be fooled by that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that there are many facets to the Great Deception. And one that we're seeing right now, as we talked before about the rise of anti-Semitism, both on this program and Unraveling Revelation. We have said publicly, and I'm on record in a couple of my books, Bad Moon Rising and Last Clash of the Titans, as saying I think the most likely scenario for the end times, and it's not a theological hill I'll die on, but trying to account for the 1.6 billion Muslims in end times prophecy, is that a war between Israel and its Muslim neighbors, possibly the Psalm 83 war that Bill Salas has written about, will break out, and a military and or political leader will arise in Israel who will deliver Israel from this threat and will be welcomed by the religious in Israel, most likely the Haredim, the ultra-Orthodox, as the Messiah. Mm-hmm. Because they are still looking for the type of Messiah that they were looking for in the first century. They wanted a geopolitical leader who would restore the kingdom of David. And when Christ returns, he will do that, but a human geopolitical leader who delivers Israel from a false Armageddon would be the false Messiah, the Antichrist. Mm-hmm. So there are people who appear to have a hard time understanding that we can hold that view, or that I can hold that view, and still believe that God is not done with Israel. And so that that Israel in 1948, its declaration of independence, was the fulfillment of prophecy. Mm-hmm. Both are true. Yes.
There are a lot of Jews who are prophetic minded, who are looking for the next big event to be the Gog-Magog war. Mm-hmm. And if they believe that the end of the war that's coming to Israel very soon, I think we're seeing the beginnings of it with the October 7 war, that there will be Messiah who comes in at the end of that war. Mm-hmm. That will be the Antichrist.
Yeah.
Because Messiah, our true Messiah, will come in at the end of what is called Armageddon, the end of that 7-year tribulation period. This fake Armageddon, as you say, will bring in the Antichrist. By the way, Persia, Iran, just held their second election. This was the runoff to finally figure out who the victor truly was. And it turns out to be a man who's described as a moderate, Pezeshkian. Forgive me, I do not know how to pronounce Farsi names, but Masoud Pezeshkian won the runoff. There were 600,000 plus spoiled, putting in air quotes, ballots, and only 49.8% of people voted. That's a pretty good turnout, but still.
Yeah.
So he won. He's supposed to be a moderate, but the fact is that he is a Khamenei supporter. He's gotten that, stamp of approval. Well, he is quoted as saying, quote, he would try to have friendly relations with all countries except Israel.
Except Israel, yeah.
Now, why on earth would you have a statement like that if Israel is not Israel? This fulfills prophecy that the whole world will come against Israel. Persia is part of that coalition.
Right. That's a good point. And I think historically, looking back to the 1930s and 1940s, the same question can be asked of the opposition, about the opposition to the Zionists from bankers, industrialists, oil men in Great Britain and the United States and the Soviet Union. The ruling cabal in cabals in all of those nations were very anti-Semitic. Mm-hmm. And it would seem that if the Israel that exists today is a fake Israel, and by the way, Dr. Mike Spalding wrote a very, very interesting and provocative piece for Harbinger's Daily recently. Basically says, nowhere does God say he would create a fake Israel in the land.
Right.
Last Sunday night, my podcast episode with Mike Spalding was on, titled, No, It Isn't Fake Israel. It would seem that if Satan and his minions wanted to deceive Christians, they would have facilitated the creation of this fake Israel.
Or the idea that there was a fake Israel.
Yeah, exactly. One or the other.
Mm-hmm.
They would have facilitated an Israel, and then it's like, look, this is the real Israel, and look, it's totally being threatened by this coalition. 'Cause I will say again, I think that the role of Islam in the end times is to be sacrificed as cannon fodder, so that Israel can say, "Yay, we're saved."
Yeah, you can't get over the land, though. You cannot get over the fact that it takes place in that land.
In that land, right? And the Bible is very clear on that point. If this is not the real Israel, and we, the church, are the true Israel today, then who is Judah? Zechariah 12 is very clear that the world is coming against Jerusalem, coming against Israel in the last days. And on that day, which is a phrase that means the day of Yahweh, the day of the Lord, which concludes with the final battle, Armageddon, the battle for the Har Moed, the Mount of Assembly. Who is the house of Judah in Jerusalem on that day? Or the house of David, rather. Judah and the house of David are mentioned specifically. It's not Israel generally. It's Judah. It's the Jews. It's the house of David in Jerusalem.
Exactly.
We, the Gentiles, are not the house of David. We are not Judah. And you cannot spiritualize this or allegorize it to make that work. I just don't see it.
And why would he return to the Mount of Olives if the Temple Mount and Jerusalem were not important?
Right.
We could do another 2 hours just on the Mount of Olives.
But I think you're right. I think the opposition of even this guy who's being described in Iran, the Iranian president, who's described by Associated Press as a reformist. Yeah, reformist how? He's a supporter of Ayatollah Khamenei. He was approved by the ruling council who weeded out.
You don't get to run unless they approve you.
Right. Now, interestingly, they did disqualify the candidacy of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad.
Yeah, I know. I think that's hilarious.
But the guy that Pezeshkian defeated in the runoff is described as a hardliner. I think this is all just political theater as much of politics is, to make the rest of the world, the Western world, think, oh, look, Iran is opening up. They're becoming more open. I think it's theater. Look, we're willing to talk. Come back to the table. Let's discuss the arms deal again. Let's lift the sanctions.
I think that's a brilliant way to describe it as theater, because the fallen realm presents a lot of things in a theatrical way that keep us busy looking.
Yeah. Well, like the campaign here in the United States, and we can. I don't really want to discuss the gaps by Joe Biden, because those have been rehashed and so much of it is, political gotcha on social media.
Oh, I know.
Oh,
it really
look what
is.
he did now. I don't
think
care.
Because he mumbles so badly that what he thinks he's saying is not what's actually discerned.
Right. I'm guilty of that, because a lot of times my brain is moving ahead of my mouth, and I'll assume that what's in my head has already been expressed when it hasn't. But what we're seeing in President Biden, when you compare him with audio clips from even 10 years ago, he was much better spoken. I've seen this in my mother, and some of it was when she stopped taking her thyroid regularly and she started slurring.
Yeah, but now that she's gotten farther down the line in Alzheimer's, and many of you I know have a loved one who is suffering from that illness. And boy, I tell you what, it's a nasty process.
It is. And President Biden should not be in the position that he's in. He should not have been in this position. In 2020, the lockdowns really benefited him because they were able to hide him and use the pandemic as the excuse. But the fact is, he's just not cognitively there. The stories that have come out over the last 10 days since that terrible debate performance, that Jill Biden is really pushing it. Democrats are panicking because on the one hand, there are legal issues that will be difficult to overcome. They'll find a way to do it, to replace him if they really want to. But they know that the alternatives don't poll any better against President Trump than President Biden. I think the most telling aspect of all of this is how the media has known this for years, and they've been gaslighting us. And now the last 10 days has been them gaslighting us to say, oh, we are shocked to find gambling going on in here.
Yeah, well, that's a line from Casablanca if you don't understand it.
Yeah.
There is a meeting. Netanyahu is coming to speak to Congress later this month. Will he actually get to go in the front door of the White House and have a talk?
That's a really good question, because that decision, like most of the decisions of the last 3.5 years of the Biden presidency, clearly have been made by someone else. That's the other aspect of this. The media pretending to be shocked, one. Number two, the admission by the media now that there is an oligarchy around Biden. In fact, an Axios story used the word oligarchy multiple times in the article, but the other term being floated is the donor class, who are holding meetings to decide who should replace the president. It's like, wait a minute. I thought that's why we had primaries. I thought that's why we voted. No, apparently you just give enough money, you get to decide who runs for president?
Exactly. Well, that's exactly what an oligarchy is. Yep. It's run by the rich people, the donor class.
That's it. So the media is now saying the quiet part out loud. So I'll tell you, the last 8 years of American politics have been really, really eye-opening as the curtains have been drawn back, and we're seeing the Wizard of Oz with his levers and things manipulating things. Like, oh, so the wizard over there is just a fake simulacrum of what's really going on behind the scenes.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, those of you who live in the UK, you just voted, and you may or may not have voted for the winner, but the fact is that a strange compilation of voting took place and gave Labour a massive advantage in Parliament, and the Tories really took a beating. Reform got 5 seats, which is a miracle. They had 0 seats before. I know. And given that Nigel Farage only announced that he was coming back into politics a month ago. But they took 16% of the full vote.
Right.
It's like here in the United States, you have different districts that send congressmen and women to Washington, and these will be parliamentarians, the MPs who go to London. They are going to be meeting with their new PM. In fact, the cabinet met today for the first time, the new cabinet. It is Sir Keir Starmer. And Keir Starmer, up until 10 years ago, was an anti-monarchist. About 10 years ago, he was knighted by the late Queen. And
he didn't mind
now that
then.
he's Sir Keir, he's sort of moved away from the anti-monarchist. In fact, about a week or so ago, when the Japanese emperor and his wife were visiting England, they had a big state dinner with the king and queen, of course, heading the table. But generally, the prime minister sits right there, too, in that sweet spot. Nuh-uh. It was Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
And he was just not elected. He wasn't the PM at the time.
Right.
So the question is, what was going on?
Who made that decision?
Right. And if you look at the numbers, essentially 80% voted against Labor.
Yeah. Well, it's the same with when Bill Clinton beat George H.W. Bush. Ross Perot played the role of spoiler in there. Clinton won with a plurality, but not a majority.
Yeah. There are a lot of other parties, including the Silly Party, of course, if you're a Monty Python fan. Ding, ding, ding.
But we could do with some of that here in the United States. Israel has the same sort of situation with multiple parties, and you can form new parties and go in. And in fact, in Israel, well, we'll get to that. Don't want to jump off the UK just yet. It will be interesting to see how things change under a Starmer-led government. He's canceled the Rwanda plan, which was
stupid.
It was never going to work anyway, the legal challenges. But, I get the sense from what I've read about the blob in the UK, which is the
equivalent of the swamp.
The equivalent of the swamp. And Israel's got the same thing, where you've got very progressive people who've embedded themselves into the bureaucracy and also the judiciary, who wield an outsized influence over government policy because they block what conservatives try to do. So even when conservatives gain a majority of votes, they try to do something and they get blocked in the courts, or the civil service just refuses to do it, or they slow walk it to the point. And the same thing happens in Washington, D.C., but it's the same in Israel with the judiciary that can overturn, the Supreme Court there can overturn any law passed by Knesset on the basis of unreasonableness.
And you can actually approach the Supreme Court now from outside Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Say if you're a business and you're saying that some law in Israel is impinging upon your right to sell beans.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's strike that law
file
down.
A suit. Whereas here in the United States, you can be an American citizen and file a lawsuit against challenging the White House policy of strong-arming social media.
And you're told you have no standing.
And you're told you have no standing. It's like, well, they're censoring us. They're violating free speech. Yeah, but they're doing it to everybody, so you can't sue.
Yeah.
The whole country would have to sue. It was the same thing with the AT&T country tap that was discovered at their offices in San Francisco. Yeah. It was no one person is standing to sue, even though it's illegal, because they were listening to everybody. So it's fine.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute. So if you commit a crime that's big enough, it's like being a bank that's too big to fail. Yeah, we've stolen billions and billions of dollars. Like, well, if we punish you for this, the economy will fall. So, all right, slap on the wrist.
Here's one reason that it's important that there's a new team running things, allegedly running things in the UK. And as Derek said, it's actually the blob that answered to the oligarchs.
Mm-hmm.
The defense budget. Keir Starmer has already said he will increase the defense budget, even though they are bleeding money in the UK.
Uh-huh.
And they have been very supportive of the Ukraine.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of people in labor are pro-Gaza.
Yeah. That's going to, in fact, the Deputy PM, Angela Rayner, has been very, very clear, very outspoken, very blunt in her support of Gaza and Hamas.
Yeah, in fact, she wore a green outfit yesterday as she approached number 10 for the first time.
Yeah, well,
in her new role.
We shall see how that all plays out, but yeah, many things happening. It's interesting that as France is shifting to the right with the French elections, and it looks like the National Rally Party, headed by Marine Le Pen, will wind up in control of the government in France. England, the UK, has just shifted to the left.
Except, remember, 80% did not vote for Labour.
Right.
So because reform came out of nowhere and
took
frankly
14%.
Took 14%, I think it's 16% of the vote. It is an indicator, an early indicator that the English voters are shifting to the right.
True.
So the next vote, the next poll in 5 years or so could shift everything back to the right again.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see how the Conservatives, the Tories, can reorganize. I read one analysis that said part of the reason the Tories lost this time is because they're not really conservative. About a third of them are Blairites, Tony Blair being, Labour, left.
And some say he's still pulling strings.
A third of them are careerists. They'll go whichever way the wind blows. And then a third of them are true conservatives. Well, if the true conservatives can actually regain control of the party, like Donald Trump and his followers are trying to regain control of the Republican Party and make it conservative again, then we could see a shift rightward, because that is happening in a number of places. I mean, Geert Wilders in, I know I'm mispronouncing his name, in Netherlands?
Netherlands, yeah. Dutch.
Yeah, shifted. I mean, he's been a pariah amongst European politicians. He's basically vilified in the media.
He's a spoiler.
But the people of Europe are, and I think rightly so, are saying, hey, look, our culture, our civilization is being overrun by migrants who have no intention of assimilating to our culture.
Well, speaking of assimilation, we're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we're going to talk about Skynet.
Oh, yes. You will serve us. Giants, gods, dragons, they're all real. We may not see them with our natural eyes, but their handiwork is evident in what's happening in the world around us, the spiritual warfare taking place.
It is so true. It's obvious in Israel, but worldwide. Historically, we've seen this happen, and we want you to get excited about the Old Testament and the New, and the giants, gods, and dragons within it, because your kids need this information So do you.
Yes. We're living in prophetic times. Help make sense of it with our special offer through July. Our book, Giants, Gods, and Dragons, which takes a fresh look at end times prophecy. My book's Bad Moon Rising, about the spiritual forces behind Islam. And Last Clash of the Titans, the overlap between what we were told is Greek mythology and the Bible. And our DVD, based on the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. All of this, an $80 value for just $45 plus shipping and handling, now through July, only at our online store, gilberthouse.org/store.
Hi friends, Pastor Mike Spaulding here to announce the Go Therefore 2024 conference. We will gather Friday and Saturday, July the 26th and 27th at Harvest Revival Center in Brookville, Ohio. This year we welcome the following scholars, Bible teachers, and researchers: Derek and Sharon Gilbert, Joe Horn, L.A. Marzulli, Dr. Judd Burton, Pastor Paul Begley, Pastor Carl Gallups, Dr. Greg Reed, Tom Dunn, and Dr. Sherry Tenpenny will be doing a book signing for her new book, Walking with God. Live stream is available. Ministry tables are available for like-minded ministries. Hotel and other information is on the conference website, www.gothereforeconference.com. Gothereforeconference.com. Looking forward to seeing you.
Welcome back to P.I.D. Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and we want to remind you that we are going to Israel next spring.
Yes, March 25th through April 3rd, with an optional 3-day extension to Jordan. We'll be joined by our special guests, Timothy Alberino, Dr. Judd Burton, and Doug Van Dorn.
I know, DVD.
Yes. Please join us. You can find out the latest at gilberthouse.org/travel. That's where we will have the latest. There's a sample itinerary there. But boy, I'll tell you, this will be like a rolling conference through Israel.
I know, it's incredible. We're also considering going back on a second solidarity tour in probably November. It will be no sooner than the week after the election.
Right. One of the reasons we pushed off we'd originally thought of rescheduling our spring tour of this year to November, the first week of November, and then we realized, oh, wait a minute, that's during the election. There might be some fiery but mostly peaceful protests, so we'd better look at an alternate
But here's
date,
a good thing. If you want to go with that, and again, it will be after the election, therefore you can cast your vote, and we'll be out of the country while all of the stuff goes crazy.
So that is the deal there. Also, bear in mind that our special for June, July will be extended through August because our websites were down for a while. We'll be shifted to new, more powerful servers.
Oh, they're much better. And they're all working just fine. Also, teaser, The Armageddon Strain and Winds of Evil are being republished by Derek and myself. We got all the rights back.
Yep.
So we're going to do, as we've done with everything else as far as the Red Wing Saga, we're going to go through Amazon and you'll be able to buy it from there. You'll be able to buy it from us. And there will be Kindle versions. So as of now, there are no Kindle versions of those 2 books. Jeffrey Martis has done covers for the 2 of them that are incredible.
Yes.
So I am very excited. And I'm not going to change the books at all because a lot of the stuff we have written since then is predicated upon those books. And they took place theoretically in about 2005. So that gives you an idea of almost 20 years ago. Right.
And the God Conspiracy, which borrowed some characters and plot points from the Armageddon Strain.
Right.
Makes reference to those events happening back then.
Yeah. So that's important. Right. Well, assimilating.
Yeah. You will be assimilated.
To Diana.
Yeah. You mentioned Diana. And of course, we think Princess Diana. I think Goddess
Diana.
Yeah, I was also thinking the Paul Anka song from 1957 or whatever it was. Anyway, NATO.
One of his first big hits.
NATO is working on this new AI device. It is because they see artificial intelligence as the next great theater of war. But look, if you're saying that. Here we go. Former NATO Assistant Secretary General for Defense Investment, Marshall Billingsley, in an interview with Fox News Digital said, and I quote, There will be doctrinal discussions at NATO on making sure that we don't have Skynet take over and start engaging in kinetic action without humans making decisions. End quote. Look, if you got to say, we're going to work really hard to make sure Skynet doesn't come out of this, maybe it's not a good idea.
It reminds me of gain of function research when it comes to viruses.
Yeah. Hey, this could mutate into something that kills millions of people.
It's essentially gain of function research into AI.
Yeah, it is.
How do we have to tweak it to make it turn evil?
Mm-hmm.
We'll make sure we don't do that. But the only way we can know what steps it takes is to just experiment and try to do it, try to replicate that. There is a program that was accelerated in March, NATO. More than doubled its tech accelerator sites under a program known as Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic. That is Diana.
She was the goddess of war.
It's a public-private partnership that develops deep technologies to address the alliance's defense challenges. The fact is that NATO and much of what goes on in warfare today is not based on tanks going in or men on the ground, men and women on the ground. They are now putting robots on the ground and having UAVs in the air, drones. And so that requires artificial intelligence to run those. And it means that you have to have a way to communicate from one to another in the battlefield.
What you're talking about are lethal autonomous weapons systems.
Exactly.
Laws.
And that means that node that they all use to communicate, that's Skynet. Yeah.
The U.S. Navy's been testing something similar, low-cost drones, swarms of low-cost drones that, and I don't know what the words behind the acronym are, but the acronym is LOCUST. So like swarms of locusts coming at you.
Let me look that up.
Controlled by an artificial intelligence that guides them. The Chinese recently tested, I talked about this on 5 and 10 for Skywatch TV last year. And in fact, I think I showed a video clip of a test in a Chinese forest of these small drones chasing a guy who's running through the woods and using AI to communicate with one another. So they always kept the target in sight, even though the drones were having to actively dodge around trees, so they weren't smacking into these obstacles.
The project named LOCUST, it stands for Low Cost UAV Swarming Technology.
Ah, okay.
It's like they worked really hard to get LOCUST.
Diana is the Roman equivalent, basically, of Artemis.
Which is Inanna.
Mm-hmm.
This is a goddess from Sumer that was a sex goddess, and we're talking about there's no love involved.
No
love involved. In fact, she was famous for turning men into women and women into men.
Right.
And she also had a war goddess aspect.
Mm-hmm.
So she loves the idea of forcing people into serving her through twisted sexual rites.
Yeah.
But also going to war with one another and frankly, bloodletting. Her sword was bloody up to the hilt.
Mm-hmm.
She had skulls on her belt.
Yeah. Do not insult the deity with the skulls, with the belt of skulls.
Yeah.
Known by many names throughout history. Anat, the war goddess of Canaan, who's the one who's specifically described. Athar is the war god aspect
of Anat.
Of Astarte, actually.
Oh, okay.
But it's almost...
I get them mixed up too. So if you're sitting out there going, I need a chart.
Yeah.
Bottom line is lots of names, same idea.
Yeah. And in many of these pantheons, she is a multiple deity. In Roman religion, she's considered, especially today in the way the Wiccans worship her, she's considered a triple goddess.
Mm-hmm.
Diana, but also the goddess of the moon, Luna or Selene, and Hecate.
Yes. Hecate was
Goddess
supposedly one of the Titans that got to stay up here.
Right.
She'd go back and forth.
But Inanna, as we know from Sumerian text, the Inanna's descent to the netherworld, tried to take over the underworld from her sister.
She very much did from
Ereshkigal.
Yeah, well, didn't work.
Yeah, and you know, it just dawned on me as I'm thinking about this, because Gal is the Sumerian word that means great. Eresh is their form of Eretz, meaning underworld.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't Gal also mean circle?
In Hebrew, it does.
Okay.
But Gal in Sumerian is great, like Gal, great mountain.
Uh-huh.
Eresh kingdom, great underworld kingdom.
Key Earth.
Or Earth, but then Eretz meaning, yeah. So essentially, Ereshkigal was the queen of the great below, the great netherworld.
Yeah, and Inanna was actually responsible for killing her husband.
And then going down there pretending to mourn for her husband while planning to actually take her domain away.
Yeah. In the aspect of Artemis, with that name, Artemis is Apollo's twin sister. So when you get that idea of those two together, that's really telling you more of what's going on right now. That Artemis is the whore of Babylon. Inanna, it's the same entity with a whole lot of names.
And Diana.
Yes, exactly. So saying that Diana is going to somehow keep Skynet away, well, no.
Yeah.
She will be Skynet.
And her backstory, coming back around to AI, Diana and Artemis, is that both of them, because Diana was also considered the twin sister of Apollo. Again, same entity as Artemis, different name. Born on the island of Delos. In the rebooted series Westworld.
Yes.
The corporation that created the AI-powered androids was the Delos Corporation.
Yeah, that is really interesting.
Jonathan Nolan has done some reading.
Oh, hasn't he though? We are being told over and over again through media, and if you don't watch some of these sci-fi shows, you're missing the programming. They're telling you right away, right up front, this is what we plan to do. And when you see organizations like NATO saying, we're going to have a big meeting in Washington next month, and it's to make sure that we don't create Skynet. You can bet they're going to create Skynet.
Yeah.
It's just going to be called Diana.
Now, wait a minute here. I'm looking at the wiki, and of course, Wikipedia is only a starting point for research because it has a slant. But personal information, parents, Jupiter and Latona, blah, blah, blah. Consort, according to Stregaria, the consort is Lucifer. Diana's consort.
What?
Now, Stregaria.
No, I've never seen that before.
That's a neo-pagan tradition similar to Wicca with Italian and Italian-American origins. Most practitioners consider Stregaria to be distinct from Wicca. Some academics consider it to be a form or offshoot of Wicca.
Okay.
Stregaria honors a pantheon centered on a moon goddess and a horned god, similar to Wiccan views of divinity. So, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Again, a modern neo-pagan
Well, she's supposedly the queen of the earth and the queen of heaven, and she wants to be the queen of the underworld, so she wants to be queen all over.
Exactly.
Queen of heaven, yes. She is called queen of heaven.
Yeah. I'm going to be talking to Carl Teichribb next week and doing an interview with him. It's been too long since I've had Carl on my podcast.
We love Carl.
Yeah. He is 6
Carl,
weeks.
Move down here.
Might see him next spring. More about that in months ahead.
I hope that works out.
Yeah, next February. But he has attended the last few Paganicon conferences, pagans who get together in hotels to discuss the state of the religion. And of course, he's been going to Burning Man the last few years. He's going again in about 6 weeks. 6 weeks? Yeah, I guess it's coming up because it would be in August.
It is.
So I'm thinking.
Where's this year gone?
Yeah, here
Seriously,
in my mind, I'm thinking.
This year has just flown past.
Yeah.
And here I'm sitting, still trying to finish book 9 of the Red Wing Saga. Train up a puppy in the way she should go.
And you have no time to depart from her.
Yeah, that is so true. She's just here. Okay, bunny trail. Don't even have the little bunny over here. We were given a wonderful little stuffed rabbit to remind us that we have to think about
it's over on the unraveling side.
Yeah, it is. But Glory, the puppy, we adopted the rescue dog Grace last November. And in February, we adopted this puppy. She was 10 weeks old. She's been thrown out of a truck. If you haven't heard this story, so we adopted her. And if you have ever trained a puppy, you understand the chewing and the cleaning and the trying to be very positive in the way you affirm her good behavior and try not to shout too much when she does things wrong. I've tried really hard, as has Derek, to be loving, and she's responded to that. She is now almost 7 months old. She is completely housebroken now. She is now walks on a leash really, really well. She gets along with her older sister, Grace. She is a lovely, lovely little dog, but it's taken a lot of effort.
Yeah.
I don't
difficult.
want to ever do this again.
No, I get it, because it can be difficult when you're trying to write. You need long, unbroken stretches of where you can focus.
Not having a nose come over and knock the laptop off your lap while you're typing, or coming over wanting to go
Glory,
out.
but,
I know Glory's getting to that point now where she's very quiet. She sees I'm working and she'll just sit there and on the couch and she'll just sleep.
Mm-hmm.
But that's only recently. She wasn't that way before.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
But
we thank the Lord for those.
Well,
dogs.
amen, because they do give back a lot more than you put into them.
And they've actually become a part of our ministry. A lot of people, when we post these pictures or the little videos or the updates about their recovery from the spaying that they went through a few weeks ago, people have responded in a way that it's like, oh, thank you. That made my day to hear about that. It is the kind of reassurance that we need in these days where we're looking around, and frankly, some people are really getting scared.
Yeah.
You need to see a puppy or a kitten now and then.
You do. Just to calm down and be reassured that there are things in this world that are still good and worth defending. So, and that just brings joy.
So much. So yes, this year has gone very fast, but now finally I have gotten the laptop back out. I'm writing again. The first thing I'm finishing is the just going through and making sure that the original manuscripts for Armageddon Strain and Winds of Evil are ready to send off to Kevin so that he can lay those out. We'll get the final cover, and boy howdy, I would say by the end of August we're going to have those 2 books available for
Fantastic.
you. And I'm praying that in the next few months we'll have book 9. So thank you for being so patient with me. And Glory is the one who's benefited because of your patience. So thank you.
She and Grace did not have a very stressful 4th of July, thankfully. Just as we were starting to hear the fireworks going off here, we're out far enough in the country that any fireworks we hear are,
far away.
Yeah, and homebrew type stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, not homemade, but it's like folks setting off their own. We don't live close enough to an urban center to see the displays put on. Yeah. But just as they were starting up, the storm rolled in, and so Glory she went from barking at the fireworks to barking at the thunder. So that was entertaining.
Oh gosh!
They've also been barking at the neighbor dogs, and that's also been somewhat entertaining. I'm not sure the neighbor who had to come out and look for his dogs and found them, and
he's had to come and get them several times.
Yeah. I'm not sure he was quite as amused. We just as an early warning, and we're going to put this out as it means to be afraid. We're trying to be as wise as serpents while being gentle as doves. The U.S. government has just awarded a $176 million contract to Moderna.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I've been sharing that. If you don't follow me on X and follow Derek, we share a lot of news. Almost all the news that I share is there. I don't share it to Facebook because, frankly, Facebook is weird about that kind of stuff. So I share stories about our dogs and pictures of sunrise. And you do the sunset.
Yeah. Sunset, sometimes pictures of sleeping dogs.
Share a few things, but generally not news. So if you want to know what's going on in the world and what Derek and I find interesting, follow us on X, and it's Sharon K. Gilbert, and you're Derek.
Just Derek Gilbert.
Just Derek Gilbert.
But links are in the notes below. Also, we've got a Telegram channel where we'll put things from time to time. Mainly the Telegram channel we're posting our program updates and stuff.
I'll remind you too, by the way, I've got a podcast that I'm going to start in August called The Armored Sheep.
I think there's some great images out there of sheep, armored up like Roman soldiers.
I know Jeffrey is going to make that for me, so I can't wait to see what his concept is. But it's the idea of a combination of Psalm 23 and Ephesians 6. And so we are to follow him as good sheep, follow our good shepherd obediently, but we are to be armored up.
Right. The whole armor
His
of
rod
God.
and staff are there to comfort us, but we're supposed to also have his word and the helmet of salvation and the belt of righteousness, the breastplate of righteousness. So many things that we're supposed to be shod with the peace, the salvation of the gospel. And so I'm going to be talking about that kind of thing and sharing my idea of what's going on in the news on the Armored Sheep. And it's gives you the idea that I can talk about just about anything.
That's right, because you can.
I can, and I'll try to keep those relatively short.
We stumbled across a new show that we want to recommend. A lot of what we watch. For example, we mentioned Westworld earlier. This is not a program that we would recommend for watching with children.
It is adult. It is very adult.
And we've talked before about a similar program that shows how radical life extension would twist humanity. Well, not Caprica, but Caprica would be one, but also altered carbon.
Yes.
Again, not programs that we would recommend, but very illustrative in how really well done, explorations of how depraved humanity could become if suddenly that limiting factor of the cost-benefit analysis, hey, if you do this, you might die or get seriously hurt. If that restraint is taken away, there are practically no limits to what depravity humans would get involved in. But this is one, there was a show that just dropped on July 1st on YouTube. And so far, it's just the pilot episode. I don't know if they've released a second one yet, if they're going to be weekly. I hope they are. But the elevator pitch is very simply, The Office meets The Exodus.
Yes.
So imagine that sort of pseudo-documentary style that made The Office so hilarious, following Moses and Aaron and Joshua and
what is it he keeps
Jethro,
calling Joshua? Josiah?
Joshua.
Joshua, sir.
Yeah. And Jethro said I should be your personal assistant. Hi. And it
is so clever, but it's got a lot of scripture in it.
It really does. It's clean. You might call the humor irreverent, but I don't think it's irreverent.
No, I think it's lovingly irreverent.
Lovingly irreverent, and it shows how God works through us flawed, failing, selfish.
That is it.
Humans.
That is absolutely. It is wonderful. So if you're looking for something that, frankly, I think will give you a little bit of of a laugh, but at the same time help you to visualize what it was like for the people in the Exodus. That's a wonderful. It's just on YouTube.
Yeah,
and it's called
The Promised Land. So if you do a search on Google, and I'll put a link in the show notes, but if you do a search on YouTube for The Promised Land, you'll find it. It is very funny. First episode, just about half an hour. I kept waiting for it to disappoint me because it opened very strong.
So did I.
And I kept thinking, okay, they're not going to be able to maintain this for a full 30 minutes. At some point, this is going to, no, it's still funny. No, it's still, and the final scenes, I thought, okay, they closed it.
Oh my gosh, there's so much heart in those final scenes. So it's almost, it's just so touching. One of those final scenes.
Yeah.
Don't want to spoil it for you, but yeah, it's
hilarious. Good. The Egyptian guy wakes up on the wrong side of the Red Sea. He's trying to blend in. My Hebrew name. Yes, I totally have a Hebrew name because I'm a Hebrew.
It's Moses.
Moses? It's pronounced Moses. No, Moses. It's very, very funny, but again, true enough to the Bible that it does not get into irreverence.
Right.
So that was
well, really you mentioned, we'll go back to what you talked about, the gift, if you want to call it that, to Moderna. Moderna is one of many pharmaceutical houses that are using the mRNA technology to create new, quote, unquote, vaccines. What bothers me is that Moderna had previously been given quite a bit of money, many millions, to develop a vaccine for H5N1, which is the avian flu that is making its way not just through flocks of migratory birds, but also through many mammals, including sea mammals, and also now through herds of dairy cattle. There have been 4 human cases so far in the United States. This H5N1, by the way, in humans, has a 50% fatality rate. 50%. Let that sink in. So the idea that this could become highly communicable from human to human is definitely something we need to think about and prepare for. But I'm just not convinced that mRNA technology is going to get us there. Also, the version of the virus that they're working on is the current version.
Right.
The only way that they could come up with another, the future version, is through gain of function research.
Yeah. And
so you can bet that's going on.
Yeah. Yeah. And
that's my opinion, I have to say, for YouTube.
Right. And this is why
that's my opinion.
Sharon has been watching stuff like this since we started doing P.I.D. radio back in 2005, some of our earliest interviews. And you can find them, by the way, in the archives on our app. If you go back to classic P.I.D. radio, back to 2005 interviews with Dr. Henry Nyman,
right,
whose specialty is in how viral DNA recombines to form new forms.
I follow him on X. He's been posting a lot.
Yeah, yeah. So this is something that we're watching for a couple of reasons. Number one, the fact that the virus, if it mutates into a form that can easily spread, could be very dangerous. But also because it may be something that is used to convince us that we all need to line up.
Exactly. Well, the Armageddon strain uses H5N1, just spoiler there. But I won't tell you any more about it.
And the God Conspiracy uses the technology introduced in the Armageddon strain as a mandatory. Yeah. So, well, one final note, because I think this is kind of funny, but it's also a cautionary tale on AI, an arrest that took place in Phoenix of a driverless car. Yes, Phoenix police had to pull over.
They arrested the driverless car?
They had to, because a driverless vehicle that was being guided by Waymo, which is one of the driverless technologies out there. An officer pulled over an autonomous Jaguar SUV that had veered into oncoming traffic on a busy street. What's really hilarious is when you see the body cam footage, he pulls over the car and the police officer walks up and the window rolls down. Because then he's got to talk to whoever the operator was on the other end.
Oh my
so he
gosh.
could hear but it is hilarious. I mean, you drive, it's like, there's nobody in the car, but it's rolling the window down so they could communicate to the officer. According to Waymo.
So who's responsible if someone had been hurt?
Yeah. Well, it would have had to be Waymo. Now, Waymo blamed the incident on inconsistent construction signage on the street. It confused the vehicle, and that forced the SUV into an oncoming lane of traffic. The vehicle was blocked from navigating back into the correct lane for around 30 seconds. According to Waymo, in an effort to clear the intersection, the Waymo vehicle proceeded forward a short distance and pulled into the next available parking lot. Yeah. Well, again, the human brain, as imperfect as it is capable of making far more decisions of this type than an artificial intelligence.
And we can actually read signs.
And we can read signs, yes. So don't worry, we're not about to. Here's the idea. If Skynet does develop, we just need to put up a bunch of confusing construction signs and the drones will all go to the wrong place.
Oh, gosh. Somewhere I'm hearing Paul Anka sing.
Well, yes. There will be a day coming where our AI overlords take over, but this is not that day.
It is not that day. Well, don't despair.
Yeah.
We talk about a lot of things, and I know many of our friends in other ministries, we all have to talk about what's going on in the world.
Right.
And it's very easy to start to worry to the extent that you actually become ill. You are afraid.
Yeah.
The idea that men's hearts failing them for fear, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
And I think some people are getting close to that. We want to encourage you. The Lord told us about this stuff in advance. He gave us our marching orders. He said, this is what the fallen realm's going to do. I'm going to allow this. That you've got the secret plans in your hand. All you have to do is read it.
The guidebook to the supernatural.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, L.A. Marzulli.
Amen to that. Tomorrow morning, our weekly Gilbert House Fellowship Bible study. Tomorrow night, the guest on A View from the Bunker is David Heavener.
Oh, David Heavener. Congratulations to David Heavener, by the way. Won 2 awards at the New York Film Festival.
Yeah, Diamond Globe Awards, the International New York Film Festival for Best Inspirational Series for The Last Evangelist. Oh, there's Tony the Mailman.
Yep.
And Best Director, so congratulations. And until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
P.I.D. Radio is produced by Gilbert House and released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, Twitter @P.I.D. Radio or the P.I.D. Radio page at Facebook. Join us each week for our online Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship, online at gilberthouse.org.